Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, talking about a fun and exciting episode, guys, this evening is now that the most recent version of MAME is out, has brought some improvements to the Namco System 22 and Super System 22. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the Super System 22 arcade board in and of itself to show you games running in MAME and talking about just how well or not well they are emulating right now. And the good news is we're definitely going to be on the how well category for this video. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. Right off the top, we're going to start out with Tokyo Wars, one of my favorite games on the Super System 22. It just has so much charm and vibe. It's a ton of fun to play, and against another player, it's absolutely just a blast. But before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. But something like Tokyo Wars was one of those games that you saw in arcades back in the day. It was a massive cabinet. It had basically tank controls in a good way, not a Resident Evil way, and it was just such a spectacle, and that's something that you want to have come across fully translated over into MAME. And the good news is, as far as this game is concerned, with a twin stick analog controller, it's going to work perfectly. The graphics are great, the gameplay is as fun as I remember it. I really have no notes on this one. And just so you know, the Super System 22 was an upgrade from the original System 22, and it's where some of my favorite Namco games got their start, including something like Time Crisis, which we'll view in just a few moments. But something like Tokyo Wars is a cabinet that I really haven't seen one for a long time. I'm not sure if they just got beat up because the controls probably got wrenched on or what. And it's one of those things, the bigger the arcade cabinet and the more complex the controls, the more it seems like users are just compelled to absolutely destroy them and beat them up. That's why you see a lot of those big amusement cabinets these days broken if they are in arcades, because they just basically take abuse all day long, which is a bummer, but it's kind of just how it seems to happen. And the System 22, or the Super System 22, just looks so good here. All of the good textures, all of the perspective correctness on the polygons, no wobbling whatsoever, all of the little environmental details like the signs on the buildings just look so good. I really can't notice anything as far as the graphics are concerned that make me think that Tokyo Wars is doing anything other than what it would do if you had an original arcade board in front of you. But again, if you notice anything, leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever played this game. I would be curious. To me, it's a 10 out of 10. It's like 6 minutes of straight up fun, and then you can move on with your day. And in the current version of MAME, it seems to be working exactly like a real arcade board should, and that's absolutely something that we love to see when we talk about emulation. But now let's move over to the big elephant in the room, the #1 game on the Super System 22 in my opinion. That's going to be Time Crisis. And of course we got this game on PlayStation 1 with the gun con, so it's not like we're lacking ways to play the game, but the original Namco System 22 looks so much better than the PlayStation 1. That's just because obviously it is much more powerful arcade hardware versus a home console. And if you were in arcades back in the 90s, you definitely played this game. There's almost nobody out there that would say, I didn't know Time Crisis existed, or I've never played it before. It's one of those titles, even if you aren't huge into light gun games, you probably played it at least once. And it does have a much better visual appearance on the Super System 22 than PlayStation 1, and it is my preferred version to play outside of the extra bonuses on the PS1 disc. And the best part is, just like Tokyo Wars before, this game seems to be perfect from start to finish. I'm playing it with gun for IR, but you can play it with a mouse, you can play it with an analog controller, you can play it however you want. It's just going to work as expected, and that is always something to see. I love when games just basically work. You don't have to think about any emulation errors or setting it up. You just add the files in, double click on the game in the MAME library, and then you're playing it like you were sitting in front of a real arcade cabinet. And it's one of those things, you can use a secondary controller, a USB foot pedal, to actually emulate the foot pedal on the arcade cabinet as well. I use a USB foot pedal that I had back in like the Windows XP days, and it works perfectly fine on Windows 10 and really does give me the same satisfaction of hitting that big metal foot pedal in front of the arcade cabinet as I do when I'm just using that foot pedal on my PC. But it's time for your soundtrack sample to see how the Super System 22 audio is doing. 45 seconds, but don't go too far because I have more games to show you in this emulation test. But enjoy.
Action! Action! Reload!
Sounds great to me on the sound front. I really can't think of anything that I would improve there. Now moving over to the next game in the list is going to be Prop Cycle. When I talk about rare arcade cabinets, I mean it. This basically just shows up as some sort of arcade museum here and there every once in a while, but it is an absolutely amazing arcade cabinet that you're probably never going to see in your lifetime. Basically how it worked is you would have a bike that was the actual arcade controls. You would sit on it and your handlebars and your pedaling would regulate your speed. It was one of those things. Again, it was a very fun game to see in the wild. I saw one once on the New Jersey boardwalk back in the day when I was on vacation with my family, and I didn't actually remember if I played it or not. I remember seeing it and being interested in it, but that is my memory of the game. But the best part is here, it works 100% in MAME, but here's a situation in which, due to no fault of MAME's own, sometimes you don't get the same effect when you play a game. In the arcade, you would have to pedal faster or slower to regulate your speed in the game. In the actual arcade version of MAME here, you just have analog controls that you either push up or down to regulate your speed, so you're not really hustling as far as your legs are concerned. You're not going to be breaking a sweat when you play Prop Cycle in MAME, and for me personally, I don't mind that whatsoever, but it does kind of take away the one central mechanic of the arcade cabinet when it was in arcades, but some things just really can't be emulated. I'm sure there's some way to kind of rig a bike up to your computer and regulate it. I've always thought about doing it for a fun mod video, but I've never really come up with anything perfect to kind of regulate pedal speed to the actual game speed. I've thought about some sort of opto camera that basically checks revolutions per minute and then sets an analog value depending on what it is reading, but honestly, that is a lot of hours of work for a 10-minute video, and since my mod work doesn't really get many views, I've never actually done it. But if you really want to see it, leave me a comment down below and maybe I'll think about it again, because I do have some inklings on how it would work. I just really haven't spent the time to do it. But as far as the actual emulation outside of missing a giant bike to sit on is concerned, this is another one that just seems perfect to me. And the reality is there could be a tiny visual glitch in here somewhere, but because it's so incredibly hard to actually find a real arcade cabinet to even compare it against, if it looks this good on your PC when you're playing it in MAME, does perfection even matter? It's something that I ask myself all the time. Is one stray line of pixels going to make or break the difference between having fun or not having fun? Absolutely not. If there's some sort of graphical effect or some sort of shading that isn't here and we don't even know it because we haven't seen the original arcade boards in 2 decades, does that affect the fun and does it matter? To me personally, it doesn't. Of course, 100% accuracy is what MAME strives for as a project, and I'm sure they know what is missing, but don't think about whether or not it's doing a good job or you're missing something when you're playing these games. Just think about the fact it's so impressive in the first place that something like the Super System 22 can emulate so incredibly well on your PC today, and the fact that this game isn't just completely lost to time. Now let's move over to Dirt Dash, my favorite game as far as the Super System 22 is concerned. We're going to start with the soundtrack sample first. I'm going to come in and talk about how analog controls can be quite difficult to dial in 100% perfectly on certain games, but this game is a ton of fun. It's got a great soundtrack, so listen, I'll be right back to explain those controls. Good sound and a fun soundtrack, but as we actually get into the game here, there's something about Dirt Dash. The analog controls always seem like no matter how gently you are on the analog stick around the steering wheel, your car just absolutely wants to careen to the left or to the right. But here's the reality of something like Dirt Dash as well. I can't point to an arcade cabinet anywhere within driving distance for me to actually go and play and check exactly how the controls worked out. So it's one of those things. I'm highly presuming that the experience I'm getting here in MAME isn't accurate to the original handling characteristics of a cabinet, but I can't verify that either. So if you do know where there's a Dirt Dash, or if you own one or played one recently, you tell me how the steering felt, because it's one of those things. As much as I know about arcade machines and hardware, and it is pretty comprehensive, even if I should have spent my time learning something smarter, I do not have access to every bit of information out there, and as far as Dirt Dash is concerned, I can't really say definitively what is going on here compared to an original cabinet, because I can't find one to compare against. And just so you know, if you think about it this way, any sort of arcade cabinet or even your car has a dead zone in the wheel, so when you move the wheel left or right ever so slightly, nothing is going to happen. On an arcade, that is basically just an analog value that's dropped, and on your real vehicle, that's just a mechanical linkage system where you're not going to have any turning in your vehicle at 1mm or 2mm worth of turning in the wheel. And if you're not familiar with how the arcade hardware works, it's potentiometer based. It's basically just a track that there's going to be a moving piece either going right or left on, and where that piece is on the track is going to convert into resistance values, which are then read as analog values. If you turn the wheel all the way to the right or left, you're going to get an analog value back saying hard right or hard left, but it feels like in Dirt Dash, any sort of input that's past like maybe 10% is being read as full analog tilt in one direction or the other. Just think of it this way: if you're trying to drive your car and you move the wheel just slightly to the right, and all of a sudden your car treated it like you had pulled the wheel as hard as possible, that's kind of what I get in Dirt Dash. Or hey, maybe the steering is just sloppy on a real arcade cabinet. It's been too long for me to remember. And I'm moving over to another one of my favorite games on the Super System 22. This is Air Combat 22. Basically, it's a dogfighter game in the best way possible, arcade style, and it 100% works on MAME today. All of the graphics are there, all the controls are there, everything you need to enjoy this game. It's just going to be working, and that is a great thing, because this is another arcade cabinet I really haven't seen much of in a while. If you think about it, it's always interesting that for as many games that were on these boards, you basically are only going to see the biggest hits in arcades these days. Something like Time Crisis or Ridge Racer are still going to be out there. On the Sega side of things, something like Model 2 that was competing with the System 22 back in the day, you're going to see some Daytonas and House of the Deads, but there's so many other games that weren't as big of hits that just aren't kept around as much, and MAME keeps them all around. This is also your second soundtrack simply because it's probably my favorite soundtrack as far as all of the games on the Super System 22 are concerned. So go ahead and listen to the audio quality, get an idea of how it sounds, and I'll be right back to show you two more games that work in MAME. Just such a straight up fun game with a great soundtrack and a lot of fun mechanics, and I even love that you get a refueling minigame in between some of your dogfights, and this shows just how good the controls here in the analog variant are compared to something like Dirt Dash, which I have issues with. You have to basically keep that aiming reticle over the refueling hub the entire time until you get up close to it, and you'll see here I was able to accomplish that no issues whatsoever. That's what I mean when I say sometimes the analog controls on certain games are going to feel a little bit imprecise, where in Air Combat 22 it feels absolutely precise and it's so easy just to refuel. Now moving over to the next last game I'm going to show you, just be aware that if I didn't show you a game in this video, that doesn't mean it's not working. I just don't want to make these things 35 minutes long. I went through the entirety of the Super System 22 library. Every single game emulates, every single game is going to be able to be completed, and you're going to have fun with every single game. Now taking a look at Alpine Surfer, this is one that didn't work for the longest time, and maybe only 8 months ago started working, and that's because the ROMs actually had a bad dump. When you would go into the game, your snowboard would basically be a mangled mess of polygons falling from the sky into infinity until you ran out of time. So every once in a while you'll find that a game doesn't have emulation issues, it's just a bad dump, and nobody realizes it's a bad dump until someone actually gets a better version of it. And I've either already run the video or I will be running it soon. I was able to find a brand new version of an arcade game that's incredibly rare, and I have now dumped the disc for everyone, so hopefully it can be incorporated into MAME in the future, because it does have some slight variations. And that's the thing, pretty much every game you're playing in MAME, somebody dumped out there for preservation purposes, and you know I'm always advocating for that. And anytime I have something new that's never been dumped or seen before, I'm going to make sure I share it with everyone and hope to get it in MAME so that it can be enjoyed by the widest audience moving forward, because projects like this, people that dump games, keep the arcade dream alive. And if you know anything about me and the channel, I absolutely love arcade games, and and I love collecting the hardware, but the reason I collect the hardware is because the games I own don't emulate well. If they start to emulate perfectly, odds are I'll start selling some of that hardware to start getting even more stuff that doesn't work. Maybe I'll dump some new things as well. That's why I started collecting arcade boards in the first place. I wanted to play games I loved back in the day that I couldn't just load up MAME and enjoy. But as far as Alpine Surfer is concerned, 10 out of 10, no issues, and all of the Alpine skier games work exactly the same. And now down to a game that's recently seen some improvements in the analog inputs. This is Armadillo Racing. It's absolutely insane. It was basically a small cabinet, kind of felt like it was designed for children, but there's two courses where you basically use the analog controls or a trackball in arcades to race around as these giant armadillos. I don't know what inspired Namco to make it, but I love the fact that it does exist. It is so weird, it is so charming, you want to check it out, and the best part is, like every other game in this video, you can just sit down at MAME and play it today. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what's the best game that you saw on the video that you like the most, and what's the one game that you've never heard of before, never played, and are going to after you've seen this. And if you want to recommend another platform to test in the future, leave me that comment down below as well, because these videos definitely aren't going anywhere. But we're done. My Armadillo won the race, and I'll see you guys next time for more MAME updates. Bye bye.